Hi, everybody. Welcome to another edition of Eye on Oshkosh. I'm your host, Cheryl Hentz, and very pleased to welcome to the show tonight two ladies who are going to talk to us about emergency management and first aid kits and all kinds of stuff. So I guess, I'll just throw some questions out for the audience here, the viewers. Do you or your family know what to do in the event of a fire or a tornado? Do you have an emergency plan, a safe and designated meeting place once you've gotten out of your home? Do you have a disaster supply kit and a first aid kit, a pet disaster supply kit, and a first aid kit for pets, if you have any? Those are just a few of the topics that we're going to talk about tonight. And so I'm very pleased to welcome to my right, we have Audrey Erdmann, and she is the Disaster Program Manager for the American Red Cross in Northeast Wisconsin region?
Absolutely.
Okay, there we go. I got it. And then to her right is Amy Houle, and Amy is the Winnebago County Emergency Management Assistant Director. Long titles for both these guys tonight. I was typing away, getting it into the computer, but my fingers are injured now, but I can still use them. So anyway, thanks very much for being here. I appreciate it.
Thank you for having us.
So I would also encourage anyone who's listening or watching this show to maybe have a pen and pencil handy, or a paper with a pen, or if you're entering things on a mobile device, whatever, because we're going to be giving out some websites throughout the show, and it's good information for you to have. So I would encourage you to do that. I guess the first thing, when people think about emergency preparedness, I think they usually think about things that are weather related. Mm-hmm. And, that's, I think, probably on a lot of people's minds, because 24 hours ago, 26 hours ago, man, we were getting bombed. Mm-hmm. And now we're taping this on the 17th of July, but yesterday, the 16th, there were alerts going off left and right. Mm-hmm. Flash flood warnings, flash flood watches. There was a tornado warning in Oshkosh County, I believe. I don't know if anything touched down or not, but severe thunderstorm warnings, watches. My alerts were going off, mm-hmm. Bing, bing, bing. I mean, it was driving me crazy with all these things, but it's good to have the alerts that you can hear them. Mm-hmm. So I was grateful for that. I guess one of the things that we should talk about is how people can get alerts on their phone, and also why people should have weather radios, because I've talked to people and they say, I don't need a weather radio, I've got alerts on my phone. Well, you know what? You might be in an area where, say you're up at your cabin or you're on a boat or whatever, and you don't have cell service. Mm-hmm. Well, that's when you need a weather radio, So want to talk about those things too, but let's start by just finding out from you, Amy, what the difference is between a watch and a warning.
Sure. So it does get confused. A watch is when there is the potential for the hazardous weather. Mm-hmm. And the warning is when it is imminent danger or it is occurring right at that time. Sometimes on our website, we'll put it as a picture of a watch is you have your ingredients to have tacos for dinner. Mm-hmm. A warning is when a taco is together and ready to eat. So
it's already been cooked, yes, and it's ready to be devoured. It was interesting with the tornado warning for Oshkosh County yesterday, because I know someone who lives in Oshkosh County, and she said, I don't see anything. There's strong winds and it's raining. It's raining sideways because of the wind, but there was, so a warning doesn't necessarily mean that something has touched down. It means that can you assume that if it's turned into a warning that something has been, like in this case, that a tornado has been sighted? Or that's where I think things get confusing.
Correct.
Because they've made it into a warning, and then I always thought, okay, it's been spotted somewhere. or there's rotation
So-
on radar.
So that is one of the potentials. There can be, and it's hard because just because somebody sees, spots a tornado or the rotation, it can't be deemed an actual tornado until everything's said and done and the National Weather Service comes out and looks. But straight line winds can sometimes be more damaging than a tornado. So
sorry to interrupt, but what do you mean by straight line winds?
So if your winds are at a certain mile per hour and they have the ability to pick up debris and make it move, that can do more damage sometimes than a tornado, depending on the tornado's path.
Sure.
So when you have the winds like that, they a lot of times will do the tornado warning, because there is that potential for debris flying and personal safety, people, animals getting moved as well. And that doesn't necessarily mean there is rotation or a tornado is spotted, but it's just as dangerous as.
Okay.
So.
And straight line winds, is wind shear part of the straight line winds? Or what's the difference between straight line winds and wind shear that is so dangerous for like planes flying through weather like that?
So in all honesty, I'm not a meteorologist, so
Okay.
I don't
And
know.
you don't play one here on
exactly.
TV.
So I don't want to.
Okay.
I don't want to make something up and have National Weather Service call me and be like, please stop.
Don't do that again.
We don't want that. Okay, well, we'll just forget about wind shear. I thought maybe you knew, but okay. So, I'm sure, Audrey, you have heard people too who say, like even when the sirens go off, they're like, whatever. They just continue doing whatever they're doing. What do you say to people like that? Either one of you. I mean, why would you tell them they're being foolish to just ignore those sirens and those warnings?
I think if we take a larger look at nationally, even just last year, climate-related disasters that resulted in over $1 billion in damage, there were 19 of them last year. That's more than double the average of the last 40 years. I think the average American understands that we're seeing more intense storms, we're seeing more intense heat emergencies, and things that we may have not taken as seriously 10 years ago now can be catastrophic in a matter of moments. Something as small as a fire can upend someone's life in just minutes.
So when you're talking about, how many storms were there?
So there were 19.
Okay. And each
disasters.
of those then resulted in over $1 billion
$1 billion
Okay.
in damage.
So we're talking 19 billion plus. And that's across the country.
Yeah.
Okay. That's pretty significant.
Yeah.
I would say. And, there's just so many things to think about when you think about protecting our homes and protecting our lives. And, people who own a home should make sure that because it's so costly now, they should be making sure that their home is insured for replacement cost coverage as opposed to just, well, it's worth this much and that's all I'm going to insure it for. Because with the cost of lumber and everything else that goes up, if you're not insured with replacement cost coverage, you're going to get stuck footing a big bill.
And I would say it's equally important for those that are renting to take the time to ensure that you have renter's insurance. It may
Yes.
not seem important in the moment, but when a fire or something happens, it is so incredibly important to have that coverage.
Absolutely. Even if they just somehow injure themselves in the house and it causes damage to their own property or the landlord's property, it's important. And that insurance is so cheap.
Yep.
I mean, it's like $75 to $100 a year, and that's it.
Yep.
And so I don't know of too many excuses that there would be to not have it. Okay, so anything else that you want to say then related to watches versus warnings, either one of you?
I mean, I guess I would say I understand when people get frustrated when their phone is buzzing and blowing up all the time when there are these weather, alerts going off. But the fact that National Weather Service is sending these to every, cell tower that is in this area, they have certain criteria that they send these alerts out for.
Okay.
I mean,
For sure.
and there's always those people that are like, oh, great, I'm going to go out and watch it. I mean, it takes seconds
Yes.
for it to turn
Yeah.
turn bad. So, I mean, there's a reason for them, and I hope people abide by them.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the whole reason for them.
Well, I will admit I'm fascinated by the weather, and I'm a weather freak in that, I like looking at different radars on different apps because all these different models. But I too, I mean, I wanted to take a vacation once upon a time where they put you, I mean, there are actually things like this that you can buy on the internet. You can take vacations where you are, a storm chaser. They take you out where twisters occur. And I think that would be very neat, and maybe in my lifetime I'll still get to do it. But I'm not going to go doing it when I'm by myself. I'm going to go with someone who's,
Right.
A guide who can keep you safe. And I think the other thing, when people say to me, "Oh, Cheryl, you're crazy for going downstairs. You don't need to do that. Nothing's going to happen." But when I was 17 years old, our house was hit by a tornado. It was hit by that April, I forget what the day was, April of 1974. And I'll tell you what, and Red Cross was on the scene immediately. I know you probably weren't even born then, but you're here representing the Red Cross, and so I will thank the Red Cross for its very quick response. I mean, it was within minutes, I think, that someone was there, and they were there to help out, and so it was wonderful. But, the fact that I understand what a tornado can do. I mean, I don't know what level tornado that was. We didn't have to rebuild from the ground up. But nonetheless, I saw the power of what those tornadoes can do. And so I do take things seriously. If I get a warning on my phone, I'm going to go downstairs. I'll hang out in the family room and, watch TV there or whatever. It's no big deal to just go down to a lower level. And but for folks who are maybe, I know people who don't have a basement, and I always say, feel free to come over here, because like one of them lives 2 blocks away. I'll be fine, thank you. Alrighty then. But people here there are some who do not have basements. There are some who are strictly homeless. They're living under bridges and what have you, and then there are other people who are homeless and living in their cars. What do they do when they hear the sirens going off or they get a warning alert on their phone? Where do they go? What do they do?
So if you are in a home, apartment, whatever, without a basement, obviously try to get to the lowest area possible in your home or apartment. But usually bathrooms are a great place, because there's most bathrooms don't have windows, but get in your tub, places that are the sturdiest. If you are in a car driving, get in the ditch. I mean, the literally the lowest possible place you can.
Like culverts, for example? Okay.
If you are homeless, hopefully we have a little bit of a heads up, if it is something that, they're watching.
Right.
I don't know this, but I would assume, your Salvation Army, your homeless shelters, things like that, just like in a winter, weather, they'll take more people in, just, come in and stay out of the elements.
To weather the storm, no
Correct.
pun intended.
Correct.
So, okay. years and years ago, we had fallout shelters. In fact, there's probably some public buildings around the city or the county that still say, fallout shelter on them. And I can see that sign in my mind that was it was literally painted, I think, on the walls of those buildings. Do we have any fallout shelters anymore that you guys are aware of?
I don't know that they're referred to as fallout shelters at this point, but there are definitely community buildings that are made available to the public. I think the other important part of this is taking the time to plan ahead and making sure that you give yourself additional time. If the Weather Service says that we have the chance for, dangerous storms, make sure that if you're going to need help getting to a safer location, that you give yourself extra time.
Okay.
If you're going to rely on public transportation, that you're allotting extra time for that. And that you have a plan for where you're going to go, where you're going to stay if it's an extended time, and having that really planned out ahead of time.
Sure. So public buildings, sometimes these tornadoes strike in like the middle of the night or the overnight hours. Those public buildings probably would not, depending on what they are, they probably would not be open at that time of day. Do you know of any other places that people could go if they are in one of those categories that we've been talking about?
I mean, I would always encourage folks to rely on their support system first. Do you have friends? Do you have family members? Do you have neighbors? Because a lot of times here in the Midwest, we're always willing to help someone, right?
Yep.
So I know I've offered to several folks that live in mobile homes, if the storms are going to be very dangerous, please come over, take refuge here so that I know you're safe, right?
Yeah.
So taking the time to reach out to your network, your family, your friends, hey, does someone have a place that I could come if the weather's not looking great, or I can bring the kids and the pets and all that good stuff, right? And I feel like I keep saying the same thing, but the big theme here is to start having those conversations now and start making that plan now, so that when inevitably we have storms, and I mean even the ice storms that we had, having a plan. If there's going to be an extended power outage, where do you go? Who is going to be that support system? Who's going to be able to help you?
Yeah, for sure. I was just thinking of something and now I've lost it, but it'll come back to me. But let's talk about weather radios for a moment. And I earlier stated the reason to have a weather radio, because you may be in a situation where you don't have cell service, and yet weather radios would help. And the nice thing about most weather radios is they work either by plugging them in or they're battery operated as well, battery backup. So, I don't want to give name. I mean, I know that NOAA Weather Radio, NOAA, NOAA, they produce very good weather radios, and they're not that expensive at all. I know the county used to give some away, did they not? Did they still do that?
So when I started in emergency management, they were selling them.
Okay.
That has now gone away. We were done with them all, and we just got another shipment that our intention is to work with our public health and distribute them to the mobile home parks that we have in Winnebago County.
Okay.
If I don't want to say we have enough to give to everybody, but if somebody comes and asks us for one, we're not going to say no.
Sure. Sure. So that would include people who are homeless, who are living under bridges, or although if there's a storm coming, under a bridge may be the safest place to be. It's not a good place to be any other time, but in a really severe storm like that, that's probably one of the best places that they can be if they don't have a basement. But if someone's living in a car, or they are living, just under bridges or wherever they can find a place to stay, they could get one from you as well.
Absolutely.
Okay. And you've got them now?
Yes, we have them in our office.
So so they just come to your office, or do they call, or how do they do that?
I would suggest calling
Okay.
or sending us an email. and on our county website, it has our office numbers and email addresses.
Okay.
Yeah, if they just go on the Winnebago County Emergency Management website.
Okay, and we've got that put up right now, I think, or we will have it shortly. So, because you're not always there?
Correct.
Okay, so
Correct.
call or email to make sure that someone's there.
Right.
And then they can get them from you. Well, how many did you get?
Well, we split them with public health, so
Okay.
A couple hundred.
Well, I think that's significant. I think that's very significant. And so, if someone's going to go buying their own weather radio, like I said, NOAA makes a very good one, but what kinds of things should people look for in weather radios?
I mean, you mentioned it, having that ability to have batteries and then pack along with that, additional batteries. There's weather radios that are crank as well, so you have that ability.
Wow.
Just making sure that, you're able to take that wherever you are. Let's say, it's summertime, folks are out camping.
Yeah.
We've got folks at the EAA grounds that are camping right now. Something that can be mobile, that you can take with you so that you have multiple ways to receive alerts.
What's that crank radio that you were talking about? What is that?
Yeah, I gotta look it up. I'll give you the info on it. But it is crank powered. So if you run out of batteries or you're not able to plug it in, it can still power.
Like, remember the old flashlights?
Yeah.
I do.
just crank it up. Yeah.
So do you have to keep cranking in order for
You
it to
crank
work?
it for a while and then it'll work for so long.
And then
So
it dies
it's
out.
good in
Okay.
emergency situations
Yeah.
where, hey, we've got this storm coming through and we need to stay up to date. Yeah.
Boy, I didn't even know that there was such a thing still.
That's a little more old school, but
Yeah, it is
the
for
battery-powered
sure.
ones are super affordable, and it's accessible and easy for folks to purchase.
And they're easy to program also.
Yep.
I mean, it tells you in the instructions how to program them. I know some people who, they get them and then they do nothing with them. They just let them sit there.
Yep.
Well, you might as
Yep.
well not have spent money on them then because they're of no benefit to you. So that's another way of being prepared. Don't just get the weather radio, but set it up. It's easy to program, like I said, for your specific area, and hang on to the instructions. And then if you go to another area, like to a cabin or camping or whatever,
Right.
then you can program in that area. So that I think they're wonderful, and I don't think that they have ever missed something. I mean, it's amazing. My alert on my phone will go off, and I was on the phone one night with someone and I said, I'm getting an alert, and then all of a sudden the weather radio went off, and she said, what's that? And I said, well, that's my weather radio also telling me of an alert right now. I said, I think I'm going to go listen to what's going on. Talk to you later.
Well, and you bring up a good point. Most of our phones get the notices, but you know what? There's times you are in a spot where you don't get the cell phone reception, or EAA is a great example when you have 100,000 plus people all using the same towers. It just doesn't. Sometimes we'll get a text 4 hours after someone sent it to me because there's just so much,
Yeah.
So a weather radio doesn't have to deal with that.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that will get through.
And I think some folks rely too heavily on sirens and outdoor systems. And those systems really are set up for if you're outdoors or you're somewhere. But it's not always reliable. And again, it goes back to having those multiple ways to get those alerts.
Absolutely.
Well, I remember years ago when I was working as a reporter for a newspaper, so we're going back probably 24 years here, but there were a whole bunch of towers, the radio or the sirens, a whole bunch of those that were not working. I don't know if you were around then with the county or whatever, but I can't recall the number offhand, and several of them were in the Neenah area. There were a few on the fringes of Oshkosh, but they failed, and there had to be a lot of repairs done. It cost a lot of money, as I recall, but everything since then I think has been working pretty well. And but you're right, they are designed for people who are outdoors. If you're sound asleep in the middle of the night, in your home, you're probably not going to hear it unless you're a very light sleeper or the siren is, right outside your house.
Right.
So that's another reason why rely on alerts.
Yep.
So I'm kind of jumping around here in my notes, but let's talk about the alerts that people can set up on their phones. The county has a good one, and it is called what?
Alert Sense.
Alert Sense.
Yes.
Okay. And so that's the app that they should look for?
So if they can either go again on our website, there's a link right there to sign up for it.
Okay.
Or they can Google Alert Sense, Winnebago County. But it's free to do. You put your information in there, and then you will be added to the database that will send out alerts for, again, whether if they would have to, if there was a situation that they needed to evacuate or...
Right. Well, so the app, and I've got it on my phone, and I think it's just called My Alerts. So that's the app that I put on my phone. Are you saying that won't work unless someone has signed up to get the alerts on that app? Or, do they work hand in hand?
So when we as a county are going to send out an alert, we'll put it through Alert Sense, and it'll go to everyone that's subscribed to us.
Okay.
We can also send out, if you're not subscribed, we can make a square around a certain area that, shelter in place or whatever it is, and that will send to anybody that's in that area, whether they're signed up or not.
So even if you have the My Alerts app, unless you're signed up, that app is not going to work.
Correct.
Okay. Well, then I guess I'm signed up because I'm getting all the alerts.
Sure.
So I guess I've done that. So it is a two-part thing. They're not independent of each other.
Right. You have to physically go and sign up on this link.
Okay. And then the app will work. Otherwise, the app is not going to work.
Correct.
Okay. All right. Good. Whew, I'm glad I got that figured out. So let's talk about a family emergency plan. How do you develop one? Where do you start?
So I'd say, who's first? I would say, I think first think about different types of emergencies. Is it going to be an emergency where you're going to need to leave your home? Because that's going to have a whole different set of things that you're going to want to be prepared for, right? We always suggest for situations where you need to evacuate or leave your home or seek shelter elsewhere that you're prepared with 3 days worth of food and water, right? Any medications you may need. Durable medical equipment. Do you have a CPAP? Do you have backup power for that? Any critical documents that you may need to take with you. If you need to shelter at home, we suggest that folks are prepared with 2 weeks worth of food and water. That you're prepared with, take into consideration who's in your family. Do you have young children? You should be prepared with formula and diapers. Do you have pets? Make sure that you have carriers and leashes and bowls and food and all that good stuff, right? But ultimately, and also here in Wisconsin, in the wintertime, do you have an emergency kit for your car with blankets and food and water and things like that? But really just thinking about the different situations that you may encounter and then planning according to that.
Yeah. I was raised by two people who were my mom and my dad, they were forward-thinking people. My mother we had shelves down in the basement, and she had cans of food lined up there. And, today someone might think that that's being a hoarder, but no, that's being prepared because, our winters aren't quite as bad as they used to be, right. But they're still pretty bad. And, you need to be prepared. And so, I knew that was going to happen. So you know, you got to be prepared, like you said, for almost any situation. I do have all that stuff in my car in the winter, with the exception of water, because it's going to freeze.
Yeah.
So what do you use the water for? Is it for drinking purposes, or?
Yeah, I would say for drinking purposes, and maybe that's something that you keep in the cabin of your vehicle so that it warms up when you've got the heat on, right?
Yeah.
Just the big piece is thinking ahead. What am I going to need if I get stranded, and let's say there's a tow ban, and I'm not sure that someone's going to be able to come to me immediately? How can I make sure that I'm safe, or my family's safe? And then also the big piece that I also missed was medications. You know, do you have medications to take with you set aside? Do you know how to quickly grab all of these things? And have you put these things together ahead of time so that you can quickly, you know, head to the basement or head to your safe space?
Yeah. And those pill reminder things, that's what we're talking about. I mean, obviously people use them as reminders, but you know, they work well in a situation like that too, because you can buy them where you can have like a month's worth right there. So that's good.
One other thing to remember when you do have these kits, yes, you're going to use, you know, your winter one every winter, but make sure you look through it every year. You know, there's things that will expire, and you know, especially little kids. Okay, just because your gloves fit last year doesn't mean they're going to fit this year. And so, I mean, it's great to have these ready to go, but make sure everything is still useful in there.
Well, I will say, I did have water in my vehicle at one time, and here's how it came in handy. You know, you get all that slop that comes up on your windshield as you're driving, and I was trying to wash my windshield, and I was out of wiper fluid, of all things. So I thought, okay, I got to get this off here. So I got my jug of water, and I threw some of that on there, and that helped. So it can help in different ways other than just, you know, drinking. But typically, I don't really have water in the car in the winter, and I probably should, other than what I'm drinking.
Right.
So I probably should, you know, have more out there.
There is also a website we refer people to a lot. It's called Ready Wisconsin. And it will give you almost every single kit or list or checklist that you could possibly need for honestly preparing for almost anything. And that you can print them off, and it'll say, you know, do you have this? Do you have this? Do you have this? And there's ones for families. There's ones for pets. There's you know, disabled adults, all kinds of different things. And that's a really good one to.
And so it's Ready Wisconsin, and is that a .com or .org or?
It is Ready Wisconsin, like literally Ready Wisconsin .wi.gov.
Okay. All right. Good to know.
And it is a very, very useful website.
Okay. Well, we should definitely, I'll mention that again before we sign off here tonight. And we've also got some other websites that we've been putting up. And, you know, so for people who are listening on the radio, I'll just give you the websites that we have been putting up on the screen. The first one is co.winnebago.wi.us, and then that / everybody calls it a backslash. It's not a backslash, it's a / emergency -management. And I'll say that again because that's a long one. co.winnebago.wi.us /emergency-management. And then Red Cross is just simply redcross.org. And again, Ready Wisconsin is readywisconsin.wi.gov. Okay, so we got that all covered. So let's talk about, you know, I know that you can either put your own kits together or you can buy them.
Yep.
And, you know, for me, I'm thinking it's easier to just buy them, because that way I know that everything's in there, and if there's something else that I need to put in, I can. So on the county's website, I noticed that you have 2 different links. One if you're going to put your own together or build it. The other is if you want to buy it. I'm assuming that takes you to a link where you can purchase one. Okay. How is the Red Cross set up then, Audrey? Is that
Very similarly.
Okay.
So yeah, you can find a ton of resources on redcross.org. Another thing that's available on there that can really help empower folks is if you go to redcross.org / hazard map, that will actually show you and explain to you all of the hazards that are associated with the area in which you live in. So if you're traveling, you can check that out and check ahead of time. What are the hazards there?
Okay.
If you're curious what hazards to prepare for here, you can put that information in and really
Give
look
us
at
that website again, please.
So that's going to be redcross.org / hazard map, all one word.
Okay, excellent. All right, and I know the county, or the state rather, has, it primarily is used in the winter, I'm sure. Oh boy, I may need your help here on this one, Amy, or maybe Audrey. What it's 411, or it's something where you can find out what all the road conditions
511.
are. 511. Okay. See,
You were close.
I was close. I knew it was 3 digits, and I knew it was a 11 at the end. So 511 is another good one to find out road conditions. Primarily in the winter is when we'd want to know that, I think. And then let's talk about pets for a moment, because that can be challenging. If you have to evacuate and go somewhere, you're probably going to need crates or carriers for your pets. Cats are easy. I mean, it might not be easy getting them in one or catching them to get them in one. Dogs are going to be bigger, but you're going to have to find a way to, get them in there. And that's the only way I think you'd be allowed into a public type shelter situation, is if your animals are crated. And of course, little gerbils and stuff like that, they're already in an aquarium, so just take the aquarium and keep the cover on. So, okay, so if you do have pets, and these folks on their websites have very good information about that, but you can also go to 2 or 3 different places that are specifically websites for animals. One, it used to be known as the Humane Society for the United States. It is now, humaneworld.org. And so humaneworld.org. And then we've got americanhumane.org, and aspca.org. And when you go to those sites, just in the search bar, just enter pet emergency preparedness, or something that says emergency, and you'll get things that come up. The city last year, I was so pleased, in one of our water bills, the city actually put out, it was a 2-sided sheet of paper, and it had all kinds of things on pet preparedness for different kinds of disasters or emergencies. So we've talked a little bit about that evacuation kits are going to be different from your regular kits that maybe you just have to leave for a couple hours or whatever. What are the types of things that go in these kits? We talked about medications. We talked about having critical documents on hand and all that kind of stuff. Are there other things that need to go in there, or is that pretty much the premise of it, of what we spoke about?
I mean, I think it depends on the person, to be perfectly honest. There are people that still have, address books or, lists of phone numbers. I think that's something that would be helpful. Your documents as far as your homeowner's policy, things like that, your driver's license. If there's birth certificates or, things that are not easily replaceable like that.
Maybe take pictures of things. Like I wouldn't
Absolutely.
want to take my insurance policy because it's, several pages. But I think just taking a picture of, what the policy number is and maybe what your coverage is, take a picture of it with your phone. I mean, we all have phones and we use them for fun things, but let's use them for really important things. And even, you can even take a picture of a driver's license. I learned this recently. I had a friend who had lost her driver's license somewhere between her home and the airport. And so I looked at her home for it, but she had to jump through a whole bunch of hoops at the airport to get on a plane. She was able to, but they put her through the paces. And then someone told me, well, you know what, if you just have a picture of the front and back of your driver's license on your phone, that, I don't know that they'll fully accept it, but it'll make things a lot easier. I never knew that, so that's a good thing. So, take pictures of a lot of this stuff so that you're going to have enough to lug around, if you've got kids and you got pets and then you got all this other stuff and the pets are in crates. So lighten your load as much as you can with some of the paperwork and that kind of thing. Now, you had mentioned earlier, Audrey, home versus go.
Yep.
Let's talk about that.
Yeah, so, like I said earlier, knowing that you need to leave your home, there's different things that come into play there. That's where these documents, all these things that you absolutely need to have. But I think outside of the physical things, there's also consideration for if we're leaving the home, how are we going to communicate? How are we going to get in contact with all of our family members? Maybe there's no reception. Maybe there's a massive power outage, where we can't rely on our phones. Where are we going to meet up? Where is a good location where if I don't get a hold of you by this time, meet me here? Knowing how are we going to reconnect? How are we going to stay in touch with each other? Where is everyone going? Making sure that that information is shared amongst the family and that everyone's aware of that plan. And that sometimes, we say it all the time with home fires, right? Practice your escape. Where are you going to meet? What's the plan? Make sure there's 2 routes out of your home at any given time. Make sure the kids know who to call. Is there a trusted neighbor? Where are we going to meet? We don't do that as often for other things, right? And that really should be a consideration. These should be conversations that you're having on an ongoing basis.
And practice fire drills.
Right, yeah.
People may be hearing or, watching this and thinking, I'm not going to practice a fire drill. That's just silly. But you know what? Your brain doesn't function as well as it might under normal circumstances when you're in a situation where you're kind of panicking a little bit.
Right.
And so if you practice things like a fire drill or, where you're going to meet up or whatever, if you kind of get that drilled, no pun intended, into your brain, then when you get in these panic situations, it'll be like second nature to you. And I think that's the important part of practicing it. Even if, even if you're single and living by yourself, just thinking about it over and over, well, not hours at a time, but, just think about it on a very regular basis. And, and sometimes plans change, you may say you've got 2 doors out of your home. Well, one of the doors might be being repaired or whatever. Then you got to think about another way out, which would probably be a window. But better to go out a window than get burned to death probably or die from smoke inhalation. So this stuff is not things that people should be taking lightly, and I hope and pray that they don't, because I'm telling you, as someone who has experienced a life-threatening situation, this stuff is important, and I can't stress that enough. These ladies can't stress it enough. We're not here to just talk
Drone on.
and listen to each other talk about different stuff. We're here to help save lives, and so none of us can stress enough that please take it seriously, pay attention to things, and have plans, and have everybody in your house know what those plans are and practice them. Okay, let's talk about the difference between shelter in place and not sheltering in place. How, when, and why would someone shelter in place?
So if there is a chemical released that you are safer in your home with all the windows shut, that would possibly be a shelter in place situation. If there is an active threat as far as someone wanting to harm somebody that's close to you, a lot of times the law enforcement will ask, shelter in place just
Okay.
so they can target, that specific area and not have to worry about anyone else coming and going. There's multiple different, potentials, but I would say the most common are if there's an active threat right there,
Okay.
or if there is something released into the air or environment.
Okay. And so then when not to shelter in place would be what?
Again, if you knew there was potential severe weather and you didn't have a basement or a safe place, and you could go to a friend or family member that's outside of that area, that would be a good example of, leaving. Otherwise,
Sometimes even with those hazardous releases, sometimes there's some time there for evacuation to where there might be a decision to say, hey, it's going to be safest if we go ahead and evacuate these blocks or whatever it happens to be.
Well, and it's important that when you leave, you take everything at first, the first time, because there probably won't be a second chance to go back in. I had a friend who had a house fire recently, and it was an interesting situation because it was a house that they were, renovating for their dream house when they both retired. And she's retired, but he's not just yet. And they were given one opportunity to take stuff out of the house, and then that was it. They were not allowed back in, and now they're just one home, and other people weren't affected by this at all. But nonetheless, they needed to leave, and that was like 6 or 8 weeks ago. They're able to go back in, but it's still being in the process of being fixed from the fire. So they were even told to take their guns out of the house if they had any. And they were told to take computers and medications, and, they grabbed some clothes too. But, you don't usually, when you're put out or evacuated, you don't necessarily have a second chance to go back.
And we're very fortunate here in the Midwest, especially Wisconsin. I mean, we don't tend to have the wildfires, the hurricanes, the tsunamis, whereas again with quite a few of those, they know ahead of time and are saying, evacuate. And there are people that choose not to. But there is a chance, you leave and you may come back to nothing there anymore. So you're right. The more prepared you can be in any of those situations, the better off you're going to be.
One of the things that struck home with me when you're talking about evacuations and leaving when you're told to leave, when I lived in Houston, there was it was Hurricane Alicia. Now it hit Houston fairly good, especially like with the with all the tall skyscrapers and so forth. But Galveston was supposed to be the direct hit, and they kept saying, and Galveston is an island, and so they're saying, get off the island, get off the island, get off the island. We're stressing this strongly. Get off the island. And something came across. I think it was like 2 or 3 in the morning, and the weather persons said, if you have not left the island, you need to seek shelter because it is going to hit and you don't have any options now. It's too late to leave the island. And that just resonated with me because it sounded so so serious, so devastating. I mean, the emotions that went through my mind at that point for people who did choose to stay, it was incredible, all the emotions that I felt for those people. And yet I also thought, come on, you were given lots of notices. I mean, that's the thing about a hurricane. You got lots of time
Right.
to
Yeah.
prepare and get out of there. It's not like a tornado. I do want to mention for folks, though, that, you know, the Red Cross doesn't just have their Red Cross website. They have a ton of apps, and I guess I got to dig out my phone for this. And because I'm a weather freak and an emergency freak and all that kind of stuff, now I know I found it before, and of course now that I want to find it, I can't. But the Red Cross has an actual pet first aid book. It's an app, but everything is on there for first aid, and it is free. And then there were all these other apps.
Yeah,
Here
the
we go.
biggest one being the emergency app.
Yes, there's an emergency app,
Yep.
a hurricane app, a tornado app, an earthquake app, and a swim app. Now, you might say, Cheryl, why do you have all those on your phone? Well, I have them on my phone because if I live in a place where tornadoes can hit, I might be out swimming and need to know things. Or I have been swimming and I might need to know them. I might travel to an area for vacation or wherever where all of a sudden an earthquake happens. Well, Cheryl's prepared. She can pull up the earthquake app as long as I've got cell service.
And I would say that emergency app has all of those alerts.
It
so
does.
The emergency app itself is a free app that's available to the American public. And not only within there does it have different alerts that you can customize, so you can customize it to alert you when there's, I mean, right now, air quality alerts. You can customize it to all kinds
Yeah.
of different weather alerts. You can set up alerts for different areas. Do you have a kid that's going to college out of state and you want to monitor the weather conditions there? Are you traveling somewhere, like you said, where you want to make sure that you're keeping up with this list of alerts,
Yeah.
even though those aren't the same ones that you may deal with at home, right?
Right.
And that information is also available in Spanish on that app as well.
Oh, okay.
So, and then within that app are built-in preparedness information. So in there's more information about what are the risks in your area that you have, you know, set up for alerts,
Yeah.
and how can you help prepare for those?
Yeah. And I would also say, you know, we're talking about preparedness. Be prepared for almost any contingency. And that's hard to do, I know, but it can be done. So you guys sell these supply kits. You've got a link where people can go to get them.
Mm-hmm.
You guys at the Red Cross actually sell them. And I've purchased both your regular first aid kit and the pet first aid kit. And, you know, and we've got first aid kits in our cars and in the house.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So you guys have made some money off us. But, you know, it's not money that is wasted. It's important. I mean, you might have an accident where you just cut your finger or somehow injure yourself. Well, that first aid kit that you have in the car might come in handy. But like you said, you know, Amy, just, you know, refresh this stuff as time goes on.
Yes.
If you're using something, when you get home, replace it so that you're not missing something somewhere along the way. So another part of being prepared, I want to go back to folks who are homeless. They should find different places where they can go to seek shelter if they don't have family or whatever, where they can, you know, hunker down with somebody else. I would recommend that they, you know, put this information in their phones if they have it, know where the locations are, put the addresses in there so that you don't have to try and in an emergency situation try and remember these things. You can just pull up the place, pull up the address, and it'll take you there so that you don't have to try and find it. Because like I said, we're always not thinking as clearly in an emergent situation as we are on a day-to-day basis.
Right, yeah.
And so let's not rely on our memory for certain things. Let's practice, let's have it in our phones, and so forth. There's so many things that I think we did not cover tonight, but the main thing is to be prepared. We've given out a number of websites, but I think if you go on any internet search thing and type in emergency preparedness, you're going to get a wealth of information. A lot of it will probably be repetitive of what we've said here tonight, but there might be some other things that we haven't mentioned. I think we tried to cover everything, though, and I think we did a good job of it. In our remaining couple of minutes here, though, Audrey, I want to talk about the Red Cross, because one of the things that I noticed on your website is you guys are always looking for volunteers.
Absolutely.
So what kinds of things would a volunteer do, and what kinds of qualifications do they have to have in order to volunteer with you guys? And maybe do that in about 2 minutes.
I'll be quick. So for the general community, obviously during times of disaster, it's hard for folks to go to blood drives. So donating blood always helps.
Okay.
The Red Cross helps provide more than 50% of the United States blood supply for blood transfusions. So when those disaster happens, that makes it very difficult to meet that need, right?
Sure.
On top of that, those volunteer opportunities, we have a ton of opportunities, and many of which don't require you to have any experience. We will train you, we will show you how to do it. There's opportunities to help support community members locally with home fires and storms and shelters locally, but then there's also opportunities to get trained and do sheltering and feeding and caring for those that have been impacted by disasters nationally. Our volunteers deploy all over the place. Wisconsin has
really?
a proud tradition of having an incredible cadre of volunteers. The Red Cross is 95% volunteers, right?
Holy
These
cow.
are folks that are giving their time and their hearts to caring for others. Whether that be in our services to the Air Forces, our biomed or our blood folks, and then our disaster cycle services. So our folks that are deploying nationally and supporting hurricane responses and, and floods and such. So
when you're deploying them to some of these other places in other states, I immediately come to think about the floods that were just in Texas.
Absolutely.
But there's so many other disasters. When you deploy them to other places, are they responsible for their own transportation getting there? Or
No, we take care of our folks. So we will take care of their travel. We'll take care of, where they're going to stay. Sometimes we can get folks into hotels, and sometimes we have staff shelters. So we'll make sure they have a safe place to sleep, that they're taken care of, and they have funds for food and everything. If we're not directly feeding them, that they have, a card to spend on that stuff. So we support our volunteers through the whole process.
And then that brings me to the last remaining point. You guys rely on financial donations.
Absolutely.
And you can help support them on their website, redcross.org. That is going to do it for us. Thank you guys so much for being here. I know you came from EAA and you're technically on vacation this week, and you kind of got a late notice about coming up here, and you drove up from Madison. But thank you both. I really appreciate it so much, your being here and sharing your wealth of knowledge with us. So thanks to my guests, thanks to my crew, and of all importance, thanks to you. We'll see you next time. Until then, take good care. Keep your eye on us. We've got our eye on Oshkosh.